All right, all right. What is going on? Test, test. Let's get this started. So, welcome to another episode for the third training. This is the third live training for Real Estate Gold Diggers Fall Challenge 2025. So, welcome aboard, everyone. So, I appreciate everyone being here. So, let's make sure we get everyone inside of this. So, we are always testing things out. So let's test out the cameras real quick. Make sure that we can see me and that you guys can hear me. So it looks like we got the sound is check, check, check. Um, let's see here. I think we got everything. I think the sound is check. I know we got the slides here with the information. Now it's going to be all about you guys. So welcome once again. I am your host for this uh, challenge. This is Chris Brown, your real estate professional and marketing entrepreneur. So I appreciate everybody being on board. Really like this. Really enjoying this as well. But let's do you guys have been here. You guys know what's going on. This is that challenge where we're helping you build and understand the process of building generational wealth. But more ultimately, we're doing this through real estate. With us doing this through real estate, there's a piece that becomes a bit of a challenge, and that's overcoming the challenge of the obstacles of dealing with contractors, understanding how to build that super team, also understanding how to uh, speak contractor. That's what we're going to call it. Speak contractor, because it is a separate language in itself. So I always encourage you guys to definitely fill in. So with that being said, guys, let's go ahead and chime in. Let's go ahead and get us started. We're going to do a recap of where we are so that you guys understand. So there was a homework assignment each live training that we do. I always want to try to keep you guys engaged. By keeping you guys engaged, I'm giving you a homework assignment. It's not like homework that you used to get when you're back in school. This is the type of homework that's going to help you understand this process. It's a journey. As you're doing and getting involved, you're going to have questions. So while you have this opportunity, get involved, get engaged, take action now. Don't wait till next month before you get started on this. Go ahead and start taking action now. That way, as your questions become that, as you have questions, you can go ahead and get them answered. Ultimately, yes, if you have questions later on down the road, and you guys have bought into the program and understand the community, you'll be able to ask some questions, and we want to be able to help you out because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that you are being successful. So, quick recap. Let's get here. All right. So we spoke about the mindset. So understanding what your why is. This is going to be key throughout the whole process. We'll also give you out some free information. There was a course that I created before that gives you a little bit more of a 10,000. That's because the perspective I've been giving you guys is like a 30,000 foot perspective, and you guys want a little bit more details on some of the topics that I've been going over. More specifically, you're going to find it. The actual code on here, it says REG Summer 2025. It's actually REG Fall 2025. So keep that in mind, guys. It's REG Fall 2025. I'm just catching that. But I will make sure for everyone that has registered, I'll make sure that the code, you should have already received it because this is day 3. So I gave this out day 1, but making sure that you guys have that information. I want to make sure it's there. We also discussed about the $100,000 opportunity. This opportunity is not for everyone, but it's a lot of this type of opportunity that's out there for specific type of investors, for those who are looking to get started in this process that have not had that opportunity just yet. So keep that in mind. So be sure to check that out. That was on a previous training. I believe we did that in day two of the live training. So you can, for everyone that's registered, you should have received a recap of day 2. Go ahead and look at that information, review it, see if that it may be something for you. This may be a play that you want to take on yourself. We also talked about 9 habits of highly successful people. Guys, it's the mindset. You want to be successful. In order to be successful, you're going to have to start creating some particular habits, and what those habits are, you're going to find out. See what some of those habits, you may already have a few of these habits and you may have just been doing it and just wonder why no one else does it. But this is giving you a few signs of what those habits are of highly successful people. So be sure to check that out. Then we talked about building your contractor team. This is going to be a huge money saver for you guys, for everyone in this process. This is going to be a continuous list or continuous team. You're going to be rotating people in and out because let's be truthful. A lot of times when you're dealing with contractors, they're just as good as their last job. When you're on a new job, sometimes things happen, they get busy, the relationship goes sour, whatever it may be. uh, you want to continuously be recruiting. Always keep that in mind because at the end of the day, you don't want to find yourself in a position where you are stuck with using someone that you don't want to use, or to position where you're spending a lot more money than what you necessarily need to actually spend. So always keep that in mind. You're going to be always constantly recruiting. When you're out and about, you're looking at job sites, you're speaking with different people, you're in hardware stores, continue to speak with contractors, continue when you're at events and you're speaking with different contractors that provide different services, continue to grab their business card, continue to interview them. Because once you get the ball rolling with your current contractors, you won't have to spend as much time with them. It allows you to spend more time on the business versus in the business. So continuously building your team, that's an aspect of working on your business. So always can remember that continuously recruiting and recruiting. That will go a long way for you guys. So um, let me get this over here. So for those who are more visual, here are the items that we're continuously going over. But that's why I tell you guys it's always important uh, to pay attention. This is why we have this on. Um, these videos are available to you so that you can go back and review this information. Building a super team. So building a super team, resources, and also the mindset of being able to scale. A lot of times, don't get me wrong, you're going to be able to get certain tasks done. A lot of the perspective that I'm giving you guys is being an individual. You're looking at this as a business and not a hobby. By looking at this as a business and not a hobby, you're going to get a lot of suggestion and feedback from me about being systematic. You know, if you're able to be systematic in your approach, building your teams, building your contractor teams, and building your professional team, I'm having you do this because it's going to position you to have that solid foundation. By having that solid foundation, you'll be able to continuously grow. If you have that solid foundation, and it may not that you have everything all at once, but you understand what that foundation needs to be in order to be a highly successful individual in this realm. You know, as you're building generational wealth, you got to remember this is not just a project. This is about building generational wealth. It's going to impact you, your current family, your family's family, your family's family. How what is that lineage going to continue? How far back is it going to go? You know, are you going to be here and it's still going? That ideally, that is the ultimate plan, right? But at the end of the day, you want to be successful in what you're doing. So I'm telling you these different things because these are some of the mistakes that I made, and I was like, oh, I don't need to do this, I don't need to do that. But I also realized that later on down the road, one, I bumped my head a little bit, but then two, it also stagnant. My growth was stagnant because I didn't have a solid foundation. I had to go back and redevelop that foundation. By me redeveloping that foundation, I was able to grow a lot faster, a lot more, and a lot longer. So a lot of times we're thinking about, oh, I want the instant growth versus the longevity growth. So keep that in mind. Understanding the real estate market, we did talk about that. Understanding the real estate market, just understanding the cues that are out there, understanding that there are cycles, that this is a business that has cycles, and being able to understand how to navigate those cycles. So that is very key. And then understanding which professionals on your super team will be able to help you navigate that process. That's always key. Okay. You want to be able to navigate this. This is always a key thing. Setting investment goals and strategies, we did talk about that, because at the end of the day, you understand what type of investor you want to be. Some people are, as you're shifting with different cycles, you're a different type of investor. If you're looking for short-term money, a lot of times you're building up a solid foundation where you have properties that you're making passive income off of. And then when the market kind of turns, whereas you're going into more of a seller's market, then you may release a few properties. That way you're making a little bit more income at that time. Okay, so it's kind of like flipping properties, but it's flipping properties with the longevity mind. So a lot of people, they're flipping properties within the 3 to 6 month period, whereas it maybe have the mindset of, okay, I'm gonna hold on to this property, get it rehabbed, and look to sell it maybe some years down the road. Now, a lot of times when you sell, you're selling in order to maybe get a little bit bigger. If you have two houses, two homes, you sell that for maybe an apartment building. Sell those two homes for an apartment building. You get a couple of apartment buildings, then you may be looking at more either larger apartment buildings or commercial buildings. So that's how this process goes as you continue to grow and get things paid off. It's a process, but it's also understanding what your goals and what your strategies are. And we did talk about that in the previous training that we did. But moving forward, we are going to be talking about finding and evaluating properties. This is major. This is very major for a lot of people as we're talking about finding these different properties. Finding properties is, a lot of people are not aware of where to look. And that's what we're going to go through. As we're going through this, I'm going to tell you guys how to find some properties, things to be mindful of if you're using certain tools. There's a lot of free tools that are out there, so it's not really necessary for you to pay for a bunch of tools unless you're really trying to scale. A lot of times, if you want that information right away, or if you're in a position where you don't have the time to invest, but you have the money to invest to utilize certain tools to give you information. I know that is true for a lot of distressed properties. There's ways of buying list of properties. So make sure you guys are mindful of that. So as we go through this, I want you guys to be able to, I call it the hunting for properties. A lot of times, you guys, if you guys follow me on social media, you'll find me posting saying house hunting, property hunting. This is what I'm doing. A lot of people just like, oh, you're just looking at properties. Oh, I'm looking at properties for a reason. I am looking at properties for a reason. So house hunting, looking at properties that are available, online listings. So a lot of times when we're looking at properties, you're going to find a lot of these properties that are going to be online. So being online, the first step, you got to look at this as it's basically a treasure hunt. The first step in the treasure hunt is knowing where to look. Properties don't just appear out of thin air unless you have a magic lamp. And I do not have a magic lamp. So, but I do have some resources that I leverage to be able to find properties. So the first one I would say is online listings. So with online listings, you want to look at websites like Zillow, Realtor.com, and MLS, and that's the multiple listing services. These are gold mines to finding properties because it's just a huge database of all types of properties. Think of them as treasure maps. They provide a wealth of information from property prices to photos, neighborhood details. Plus, you can search from the comfort of your couch. Yes, and I know a lot of people are on their phones late at night trying to see what kind of properties are available. So this is definitely a great resource. So another great resource is real estate agents. People are like, well, why would I talk to a real estate agent? Trust me, real estate agents, these are professionals and are thirsty for opportunities to work with people who only just want to buy properties, and it doesn't have to be emotionally attached. There's no emotional attachment. So they basically have inside knowledge, access to off-market deals, and can help you navigate the complex world of real estate. So remember I was talking about building that super team, that team of different professionals. Real estate agents was one of those individuals. So make sure that you guys go back to that free information that I gave you guys and look up the information about the real estate agents. Plus, they do a lot of the legwork, giving you more time to focus on your strategy. So I find this to be true. I've been in that position as well, whereas like I'm maybe working with an agent and they're giving me details because one, they're already, if you're working with the right agents, you want to, if they're in a market that you're looking to invest in, they are going to provide you with a lot of information that they're already gathering this information because you're typically looking for agents that work the farm or have the farm in the market that you are looking to invest in. So you work with those individuals because they're already producing that information already. So a lot of times they're already running that. They have different statistics. They're aware of different properties that are becoming available. They're aware of properties that were on the market that aren't on the market anymore. They may have expired because they couldn't sell, but now they have an investor that's coming in and doesn't mind that it needs work, and that's usually a unique buyer. So being an investor, you're usually a unique buyer. So keep that in mind. So that's hunting for, that's one another source. So a third source, and I always tell people this is networking. It sounds very simplistic and old school, but this goes a long way. Just because there's always in every town, there's usually every metro area, there's usually some type of real estate investment club. I encourage people to join them. You can join them in person. You can join online forums and talk to other investors, speaking investors, seeing what people, what I always tell you guys, OPM. A lot of people say, oh, other people's money. No, OPM in my world, that's very strong. OPM is other people's mistakes. A lot of times people are sharing mistakes that they're needing help to get out of. So they found themselves in a position that they need to get out of. And that's when you're in this community to be able to help one another. Because they may have, it may be something simple, maybe something like real deep, but at the same time, you also get a better idea of how they got into that situation and then how your strategy that you currently have, how can you avoid being in that same situation? So networking is like a treasure trove of information and opportunities. You never know when a fellow investor might tip you off to a hidden gem. Always keep that in mind. People are always investing. So keep that in mind. And like I said before, and I'll continuously say this, just because the deal is not for you, it may be for someone else. So just because it's not for them, it may be for you. So keep that in mind. Driving for dollars, is another resource uh, while I'm trying to hunt for properties. This is textbook. This one will never get old just because a lot of times the signs of a distressed property, it happens before it's placed on the internet, before it's placed on some type of a list. So that's why I always tell people niching down to your market and really knowing what market you want to initially go after, go ahead and do that first. If you do that and you're driving for dollars, you'll be able to drive each road, each street, and see what properties are out there. Once you know what properties are out there, then you can easily um, find these properties in your market. You can easily market to them because then it's kind of like the magnifying glass. You know, the more you focus on one spot, the hotter it gets, right? So if your magnifying glass is going all over the place, it's not going to have an opportunity to focus. So it's just like your mindset, your plan, your goals, your strategy. If your strategy is all over the place, you're in different markets, you're not really going to focus on a particular market that's going to bring you success. So always keep that in mind. You want to have success. And at the end of the day, you want to get deals. You want to get transactions. You want to put in offers. You want to let people know that, hey, I'm interested in your home if you're thinking about selling. Get their information. Like, hey, I'm thinking about buying in this area. Let me get your information. Get their information. Move forward. Okay. If they're interested, you may have what I call a 7 point or 7 touches. I like this. You have 7 touches. But a lot of times, what I try to do with possible sellers is I get their contact information. So their information may be one, their name, yes, make sure it's the owner, telephone number, and email. So I look to communicate with them multiple times, at least 7 times. There may even be a postcard touch that I do. I send them a postcard, but then this is the key. Once you don't send a postcard initially, you send the postcards after you've made contact and you spoke to them over the phone. And once you make that contact, when they see a postcard, they don't see it as spam. They don't see it as, junk mail. They see it as like, oh, this is the person I spoke to. Oh, let me read up on this individual a little bit more. Oh, this is what they look like. Oh, this is what they're trying to do. Once you get those 7 touches in there, and you can make those within like a 2 to 3 week period where you're making those 7 touches. And then you can start going maybe once a month, once every other month, but just staying in front of them. And that when now you can send postcards, and those postcards are going to be um, more impactful now versus you just sending random postcards. Because trust me, um, I talk about, and I may even do a separate course on marketing about how making those 7 touches. As I'm saying this out loud, that may be a good opportunity for you guys to be aware of. Just doing those 7 touches and then making it valid for those postcards. Because now you don't have to be as aggressive and you don't come across as being so salesy when you do that. So keep that in mind. Driving for dollars, that's a big, 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 big situation there. Good opportunity, just understanding your market. So evaluating potential investments. So something that this is important. You may hear me say the term buy box, and what a lot of investors aren't aware of. And I said this happens with novice investors. This happens with more established investors as well. Not understanding what their buy box is, and typically what a buy box is, so that you guys are aware. Because a lot of people ask me this. Because when I say it, no one typically responds right away and says, "Oh, what is a buy box?" So, guys, when I'm talking to you about a buy box is basically a set of criteria that I look for when purchasing a home, an investment property. Now, if I go in, now I have a particular buy box, and I usually share a lot of tips on this. I have a buy box depending on the market, but typically I have a buy box when I'm trying to flip a property. I'm looking at areas such as location, I'm looking at things such as the size, um, the number of bedrooms, the minimum number of bedrooms that I want the property to have, the the make of the home. So if it's a concrete block or if it is a wood frame home, but then also is it on a concrete slab or is it a raised home? Because you run into that a lot of that in certain communities where it would be a wood frame home, but it's on a concrete slab. So that's not a bad deal either. So, but it gives you a better idea of what you're working with because then it also lets you know that, hey, I'm going to need to do certain things if it's made of this, or I won't be able to add as much value. Because a lot of times people are like, well, can I add a bathroom to this home? Now, if it's a property that is raised, wood framed, it's not as difficult to add a bathroom versus a property that is concrete block and is on a concrete slab. Because where's the plumbing coming from? It's coming from the ground. So that means you got to cut into concrete. You got to do a whole bunch of permits, approvals, and make sure that you're getting professionals that know what they're doing. Always licensed and insured. Versus if it's a wood frame, you always get licensed and insured. But at the same time, you can be a little bit more creative, and it's not as difficult to labor wise to be able to say, "Hey, I'm gonna close this room off and turn it into a bathroom." Well, now I'm just going to connect the drain, place a drain there, and connect it to the main drain, and then the main drain is like maybe 5 feet over that way, and it's easy to do that. You're just shifting and cutting piping up under the house versus you having to cut concrete, going through under walls. Trust me. So if you're trying to add value, usually it's a little bit easier on the wood frame homes versus a concrete home. So keep that in mind. All right. Location, location, location. This is, you hear this all the time in real estate. So once you found the potential treasures, it's time to evaluate them. Not every shiny object is gold, and not every property is a good investment. So keep this in mind. Like I said, it may not be for you. So that's why if you have a buy box, it will help you avoid getting a property that may, just because the numbers work doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for you and for your market. And And I've shared this with in a previous training where there was a situation. Actually, it was the very first training that we did for the fall challenge. So go back to day one, and I speak in regards to a property that was basically two bedrooms and one bath, and they wanted to add a bathroom. Now, they didn't realize, they saw that it was a wood frame home, but they didn't realize that it was a wood frame home that sat on concrete slab. So for them to add that extra bathroom, they're cutting through concrete versus being able to go up under the home, pop up the new drainage, and connect it to the main lines. So it was more labor intensive. It required a different type of contractor. So this is literally like thousands of dollars difference just for to add this bathroom. So when they were looking to only maybe spend 8,000 for a bathroom, they ended up spending double that. So keep that in mind. So location, um, you know, we'll talk about location here. So location, location, location. So location, this is the real estate mantra. You'll always hear about this for a reason. A great property in a bad location can be a nightmare, while an okay property in a fantastic location could be a gold bond. Look for areas with good schools. Ooh, keep that in mind. Low crime rates and amenities like parks, shopping centers, and public transportation. So keep that all in mind when you're looking at properties that you may be wanting to flip. And the reason I say that is because if it's a property that you want to flip and you know what your end game is. If you're planning to buy and sell, you know what your end game is. You know what your, I call it your avatar. You know what your buyer is going to look like. Okay, your buyer is going to be possibly a family. That's what my that's what I like to flip to. I like to flip to families. By me flipping to families, I am looking for properties with a minimum of three bedrooms. So if it has a minimum of three bedrooms, it's usually if it's a single mom and she has two kids, or husband and wife, they have two kids or more, two kids or more. So minimum of three bedrooms, two bathrooms. I don't know any world right now, any parent that wants to share the bathroom with their kiddos. So you got to have two bathrooms. That is a big major. And if you don't have two bathrooms, can you add two? So keep that value. That's adding value. That's a necessary value. You know, if I'm dealing with a concrete block home, I know it's going to be a significant amount of money to get that second bathroom. So I'm usually looking for it to already have two bathrooms, unless I'm looking at a different type of property. Then I'm also looking for a garage. I like garages because people like to pull their cars in there. If it's a single mom, she wants to make it feel a little bit more secure by pulling a car in there. If it's a family, they may want to be able to pull at least one of their vehicles in there and also have storage. Storage is a big thing right now. So having that additional storage, or if they don't want to use the garage for the car, they have storage. So keep that in mind. If it has, then it's also maybe even it's in good schools. And every family and anybody can correct me on this. Anybody that's moving into a different area or new area, may even be a new state, just or a new neighborhood, they're looking at, and if they have kids, they want to know how are the schools there. If the schools are great, one, they feel that their already established family can live there. Or if it's a younger family and they don't have kids yet, they can see themselves being there for a longer period of time. And that could be their home that, that they live in for a period of time. They can have kids there. They can go to the local schools. The schools are great. That's a win for any potential buyer. And that goes a long way if you're in a great school district. Also, low crime. Nobody wants to live in a community. I don't know anyone who volunteers to live in a bad neighborhood. So I don't understand anybody that say yes, I want the bad neighborhood. No one typically says that. So um, another way of evaluating potential properties, condition of the property. Pay attention to the property's condition. Are there signs of neglect or major repairs needed? Look at issues with the roof, the foundation, plumbing, electrical system. If you're in Florida, definitely look at the HVAC system. A fixer-upper can be a great deal, but only if you're prepared for the renovation costs. So keep in mind, a lot of these items, like I said, as part of the process, you want to have your property inspected. As part of the process, they're going to do a 4-point inspection as well as part of their overall. They're doing that because those are the big items that need to be repaired. They're going to need to be repaired. Um, and they cost a lot. So if your roof is bad, that's a big cost. If your AC goes out, that's a big cost. So if you're looking at 1,500 square foot home, 2,000 square foot home, three, 4 bedrooms, 2 baths, 2-car garage. If the roof is bad, that's probably going to cost you at least $10,000 to $15,000. If the AC goes is bad, that's an inside unit, and outside unit. You're looking about another 8 grand. So these aren't small ticketed items. If you buy something and not aware of that, they may need to be replaced. So it's not a small ticketed item, but they are items that typically may need to be replaced if you're buying a fixer upper. So it's already knowing that cost, maybe already having those contractors already vented because those are the big ticketed contractors already. That knocks out a lot of the legwork for you. If you already have an AC guy, you already got a roof guy, plumbing guy, okay? Now, if the foundation is bad, you really need to think twice because if the foundation is weak and it's something going on, sinkholes and stuff like that, that's going to cause a lot of issues down the road. Now, are there people who invest in sinkhole properties? Yes, there are people. That's what they do. But a lot of times they're not buying and selling. They're buying and holding. So keep that in mind. So keep that in mind because what happens if they try to resell a property like that? One, they want to know any insurance company is going to want to make sure that there's an engineering report, make sure that it was fixed, the issue was fixed, and so forth. And then any potential buyer, once they find out that it did have a sinkhole, it did have some damages, it makes them run a little bit. It narrows down that pool of potential buyers and saying, hey, I want that property that used to be a sinkhole right there in the backyard, but they fixed it. Not many buyers are saying that, hey, I want to invest three, four, even $500,000 into this property. This is my largest investment, even though I know it was a situation before. I want to still invest in it. Not many people are saying that. So keep that in mind. And then electrical. Make sure the electrical is good. That's having a separate contractor. So when it does electrical work, by them doing electrical work, they can take care of a lot of issues for you. Some properties, if it's an older home, the electrical panels may be outdated. And what I mean by outdated, they may have discontinued them, or for some reason, they may make it a challenge to be insured, make the property a challenge to be insurable. And what's happened is over the years, they found out that a number of these older homes that have some of the electrical panels, they may have caused fires or caught on fire. Something very silly along those lines. Well, I won't say silly, but something dangerous along those lines have happened in the past, and now they've discontinued those. And now you have to be able to replace those. So if you plan on selling to a family, it's like, yeah, I want to give you this big, beautiful home, but I want you to place your family in here knowing that the electrical panel has a history of catching on fire and burning down the house. That doesn't fly. So keep that in mind as you're going through this, guys. All right. What else do we got? What else do we got? Um, Market value. So market value, understanding what market value is, guys. A lot of times you're going to really need to research this, okay? Building that super team that I keep telling you guys about, market value basically is researching comparables, which is also called comps. Okay, comparables, comps. So if you ever hear those two terms, it's one of the same. Basically, understanding what the comps are in a particular area to determine the market value. This helps you understand if property is priced fairly. Think of it as checking the price tag on the treasure chest to make sure you're not overpaying for it. So as we go through this, I've mentioned to you guys about speaking, say, having a real estate agent on your team. You can have this individual on your team, and this is how they're going to help you. Having a real estate agent on your team to help you determine the market value, they're going to be able to tell you what the comps are in that particular community. Now, if you've listened and followed, remember I was telling you about niching down to a particular, maybe just a zip code, just to start off with. If you narrow down to to a zip code, you'll be able to understand the values of homes, what homes need to include. Uh, if you find a 1,600 square foot home that sold for 425 and had decent sized backyard, one car garage, but you come across a property that's 1,600 square feet, two car garage with a big backyard, you may be able to get more than that. But you run your numbers for your repair costs. We did go through that about evaluating the property, looking at that 70% rule. If you guys go back and look at the training from before, that I gave you the free code to, it goes into depth about that type of access, okay, and understanding how that process works using that 70% rule. But then that's how you can develop your offer, understanding that if the numbers don't work for you, where you're offering close, if you know it needs work and you're offering close to what it would be worth when it is fixed up, that's not a deal. Okay. And at the end of the day, you don't want to place yourself in a position. If you got a seller that's determined to sell their home for a particular number and it doesn't work out for you, then you just walk away. But you at least leave in a good position. You don't get upset with him, be like, hey, I can't offer that. It's at the end of the day, this is an investment for me. I have set criteria and I have to go in with a particular number. I'm looking to make an investment. Um, it's an investment, so I have to make money. You're an investor at this point. The property does need work. I'm willing to do the work, but I need to buy it at this number in order for me to be successful in my process. And you don't really want to talk numbers with a potential seller. If you are talking to a potential seller, usually if you are dealing with another real estate professional, you could just say, hey, this is where my number is. This is where I need to be for this property. I looked at the number of repairs and this is how I'm coming up with this. And and that's how you go. You just go from there. And then, some people may go back and forth with you. Well, you're not offering enough. And I was like, well, hey, I don't have anybody to do. I said, this is going to cost me this. This is going to cost me this. And it was like, oh, it doesn't cost that much. It was like, well, hey, I don't have those contractors. Well, who do you know? Start digging in. It's like, hey, is there somebody else? Is there a contractor, a licensed and insured contractor that I can use to be able to do this at that much lower price? And then a lot of times you'll find out they may have a resource for you. And then you find out that it's, Joe Blow that they know that works under the tree or that, stays under the tree. You don't want to deal with those type of contractors. You want to deal with licensed and insured contractors because you may have to pull permits. You want to make sure that you're getting the value out of your property, because if an appraiser comes and they're like, well, who did this work here? And you're able to show them, a lot of times they're not going to ask you who did the work, but if you can share that it was done by a licensed and insured contractor or professional, it helps a little bit when you need those numbers, the value of the property to go up. So trust me, that goes a long way. Letting them know that you use professional contractors, that you pulled permits and you had it professionally done. This wasn't just a random job yeah that was just put together. It goes a long way. We That'll be another video. You can never influence an appraiser, but there's things that you can make them aware of, especially if new work, rehab work, reconstruction was done to the property. You can let them know that, especially if there's going to be additional warranties, because you want that effective date, because after you've rehabbed a home, there's something that appraisers look at as the effective date. So if it's all been newly reconstructed, that effective date is very on the younger side. So it's just most recent. So it'll get that higher value versus saying, well, the effective date is 10 years old. It means that everything in the property has been rehabbed up to, it's 10 years old versus being newly done and newly constructed. So keep that in mind. right? All right, rental potential. I always tell people if you're planning to rent out the property, check the rental market in the area. Are rental rates high? Is there strong demand for rentals? A property that rents easily can provide a steady stream of income, like finding a vein of gold. So another good suggestion. You know, if you are buying and holding, then this could be for you. Understanding, I've found a couple of people where they went into the process of wanting to buy and sell, but they found themselves in a position where they were going to have to look at another option. And that other option was going to be holding on to the property and then renting it out. Now, since they did follow some of the steps in the beginning that I provided to them, like, hey, your buy box should be this for a successful flip. And it mainly came down to the market, if you're dealing with interest rates being super high and so forth along those lines, it impacts the whole market, the whole industry. But because they did purchased their property in a market where the schools were good. It had transportation. It had a lot of amenities. It had parks. It had nearby grocery stores. There were a lot of people before the property was even on the market asking if they were going to rent the property. So they weren't looking to buy, but it was a ton. So they were collecting that data, that information. So once the property was done, they had a list of people that were willing to rent. Now, obviously, they want to be able to sell, but they understood what was going on. My goal is to actually sell this property once we're done, and if we're finishing on time, and we're looking at this process, and we get 2 months with no bites on getting the property sold, we may consider renting the property. And by them renting the property, what happens is they may have to do some type of refinance depending upon how they got into the deal. Like if they're under like a hard money loan, then they may refinance that property. Okay, refinance that property so they can get a better rate. Their monthly payments much less, and hopefully they can rent it where they're actually cash flowing. So keep that in mind. Um, and if there are cash flow, hopefully it's a significant amount. It may not be, but it's definitely an amount that at least covered the monthly payment of the mortgage payment so that they're not losing additional money. So they may look to sell it 12 months to 24 months down the road. And that's what typically may happen. If you're going to have to hold on to it, that's why you refinance it. Hopefully, you use that 70% rule. You're in a position to possibly be able to uh, recoup a lot of the money that you invested in it. That's another method called the Burr method. The Burr method is basically where you're buying the property, you're rehabbing the property, you're renting the property out, you're refinancing the property, and then you're repeating the process because the money that you had to pay out of pocket, that down payment, you're getting it back when you refinance. So you get that chunk of money back, whereas now you can buy another similar property and do that same process as long as you're buying it at the right numbers, use that 70% rule and understanding what refinances that you can do on an investment property at 85% loan to value. That's another topic. But understanding that that's what goes into being systematic. That's why I said this information that I'm giving you guys, this is going to that could save you easily hundreds of thousands. Because if you get into a property, now you're upside down that you can't actually flip. Now you're in a position where it's like, are you going to foreclose because you can't keep paying that monthly payment on to a hard money lender because that payment's so high. Now you got to rent it out. Now, are you renting it out where you are cash flowing, or are you in the negative still? That's why a lot of it's systematic. It's systematic. Understanding your risk. So don't take huge risk if you don't have to. So keep that in mind, guys. All right. So that was the rental future growth. Being able to see the potential. Sometimes you can get into a market early enough where you are basically looking for signs for future growth in the area. Are there new businesses moving in? Is the local government investing in infrastructure improvements? Uh, Future growth can mean increased property values, turning your investment into a jackpot. So if you can get into these markets prior, keep me in mind, prior to a lot of these communities basically booming. If you can get into these, basically, if you can get into these communities, get a property into these communities, maybe you may be holding on to it. So it's a buy and hold. So you get into it, you're holding on to it, say for a year, 24 months, and the surrounding area is being developed where you have the city investing in the roads, where now they're creating bike lanes, turning communities into historic districts. New businesses are coming to the area, new construction, new commercial buildings are being developed, new condo communities are being developed. You can get into these communities prior. Then typically what happens is you're in a win-win situation. So as you're holding on to it, that property is not only maintaining its value, but it's also increasing its value. So, and the more people that are wanting to come to the area, now your home is becoming a bit more attractive. And it becomes a bit more attractive in more than one way. And what I mean by that, it means that, okay, if you are renting the property, the tenants are probably realizing, hey, this community is getting better and not worse. It's getting better. I like this community. I may want to stay in this community. So, the best scenario would be if you're in a position where you had to rent to someone, maybe you can do a lease option with them where they can actually purchase the property. See, but these are different ideas that come about when you're part of a community. You don't know this stuff offhand, but you'll learn that, hey, I can just do a lease option. I understand I got stuck with this property. Well, maybe I can market it as a lease option, whereas I can look for the current person to actually purchase the home in the next 2 to 3 years. They may not be in a position to buy a home right now, but I could do a lease option where they're renting the property, rent the property for a period of time, and then they will purchase it at that market value. It's another conversation, but you set up a schedule. You can set up a schedule that will let you know and determine what that number is. That's a process. That's a whole nother process in itself. But those are things that you can actually do. Um, and moving forward, it becomes a win-win. You're just holding on to it a little bit longer than expected. So that's why you always have to build a foundation within your portfolio. You have different streams of income that's coming in that may be just for the investment properties, or you have another source of income. That's why you get a lot of people they have a typical 9 to 5, a career of some sort, but they do a lot of investment properties. They may do 2 or 3 investment properties a year. At the end of the day, that's a good amount. If you're doing 4 flips a year, and if you have a certain set criteria, depending upon the price points you want to be in, but say if you did a minimum, which is good, a minimum of 30,000, that you make 30,000 per flip. And that's not even for a high-end property. That may be for a property that at the end of the day is selling for 300 or 250, excuse me, under 300. And you make 30,000 after everybody's paid, your agent, your contractors, you make 30,000. You do that 4 times, that's 120,000 on a year. So if you do that in one year, 4 properties in a year, you have your team, because now they're going through, they know what you want done. It's running a lot smoother. You could be at work or at your 9 to 5. Hopefully, so there's some flexibility in there if there needs to be. That's why you get professionals in the beginning, because it allows you to scale without all of the stress. So you can still have a career, make a significant amount of money during your career, still make six figures investing. Now you're positioning yourself to build that generational wealth a lot faster than anticipated. You don't have to be involved. You don't have to be fully involved. That's what I want to say. You don't have to be fully involved. You're going to have to be involved in the beginning. That's why you do the legwork in the beginning, so that you don't have to be so hands-on, where you're working more on the business rather than in the business. I'm trying to tell you guys, I'm giving you this. I'm not just giving you theory. I'm giving it to you where it's systematic, where you can be doing multiple things. Or even if it's not your career job, you may be doing something else. I know people who are serial entrepreneurs. They're doing more than one thing. And if you got a system already in place where you're making 6 figures, 120,000, I don't know any market where that's chump change. 120,000, that makes a difference. It makes a difference, and especially if it's on autopilot. You got it on autopilot, and you're making 120,000. That's a win. All right, so like I said, that's for possible future growth. You guys are taking a look at that for future growth. Um, so making the decision. So making a decision after you've done your homework is decision time. Evaluate the pros and cons of each property and consider how they align with your investment goals. Remember, no property is perfect, but you want one that ticks most of your boxes. So remember, I was saying your buy box. Make sure you buy box that it ticks most of your boxes. And if it is something that doesn't tick it, how does it impact it? And that's where sometimes where you're in the community, you may ask that question, be like, hey, I got this property, everything's ticking off except for it's in a crime zone. Okay. High crime zone. Okay. High crime zone, how's the market? How's the market in that? Did anything very close in that same neighborhood sell? How are the actual comps? How strong are your comps? How long were they on the market? If it's, like a serious seller's market where properties are on the market for like 2 weeks or less than 30 days. I always say less than 30 days is always a great market to be in. But if they're flying off the roof, flying off the shelf, like hotcakes. I don't know. I keep saying hotcakes. I don't know. That makes no sense. But if they're flying off the shelf, it may be an educated gamble for you. It may be. It may not be. So it depends on what your risk tolerance is and understanding it. But like I said, working with someone else, working with other people, you get a better perspective of what that is. There's so many things that can happen, but just keep in mind that's why you have your buy box. Always have that in place. So, final thoughts: finding and evaluating properties is one of the most exciting parts of real estate investing. It's where the adventure really begins. With each property you invest, that you investigate, you're sharpening your skills, building your knowledge, and getting closer to finding the hidden treasure. So put on your explorer's hat, grab your map, and get ready to uncover some amazing deals. The real estate jungle is full of opportunities. With the keen eye and a bit of courage, you'll soon be celebrating your discoveries. Happy hunting, and may your treasure chest overflow with great investments. So that's something that I share with you guys, and I know you guys are like, "Well, is it really that simple?" At the end of the day, it can be. If you know what you're looking for, you're not really looking at the other shiny objects that are out there. There's going to be so many other opportunities that present themselves to you, and you may jump on that versus sticking to your buy box. But if you stick to your buy box, and trust me, when you stick to your buy box and everything checks off, you know what you need to do. You know that what you're going to offer. You know what needs to be done. You get things done a lot faster. You don't have to be recreative. Now, as you become a little bit more fluent as an investor, a little bit more seasoned, you're going to take more risk. And you're truthfully going to be in a position to take more risk. And like I said, that's where it comes to building your contractor team, your super team. So as things come about, because there's always going to be something that comes up. There's always going to be something that comes up. When these different things come up, you're gonna have that assistance to navigate through that process. It's just a new part of the process. You're gonna get through it. Um, and just real quick, I can tell you a situation where I took on a property. It was actually my first frame property, wood frame property, where it's basically a property that was raised up. It's all made of all wood. It sits on. It was sitting on different concrete, and what turned out that it was sitting on different concrete uh, blocks and so forth. But what happened was I purchased the property, my plan was to buy and hold it. It wasn't to buy and sell it. So I got into a position where basically, long story short, um, for some reason, the back corner of the property, after I purchased the property, maybe like 3 weeks into it, almost a month into it, the back corner of the house, when you looked, it looked like like, why does it, I pulled up to the property, I was like, why does it look like it's sagging in the back? But basically what happened was it collapsed on the back side of the property. So it fell down. So whatever was holding it up, it was a weak structure. Um, This is a property that I did have it inspected, but I had it inspected by, I didn't have my own inspector. Put it that way. I didn't have my own inspector, and the minimum amount of inspection, and there was basically a minimum amount of inspection that was done. At long story short, and it should have been caught beforehand, but it wasn't caught. And with that being said, but luckily I had a team of professionals, contractors that came in. They saw it. It was like, hey, Chris, we're gonna go in. He said, this is what we're gonna have to do. They were gonna have to go in and jack it up. They went to go take a look at it. They saw it. Had their guy go up under it. So before I even gave them the green light, they actually already jacked it up and fixed the situation. So that's how, but what they had to do is go on the inside of the property. They had to pull up the floors, restructure everything because they had the other parts of the job, but they knew that if this part didn't go through, that we're going to have a situation that they weren't going to have a job at all. So they were willing to leverage their skills to get that part fixed and repaired. It took, like I said, they got it done in a couple of hours. I guess they had everybody there that was able to take care of it. But all I know, it was taken care of, and we got everything else done at that property. And we got that project completely done. I remember that project only took, once we got started, maybe 3 weeks to do. Yeah, well, it was less than 30 days. We're ready to go. I had people already in line that was looking to rent the property. So they were looking at the property as they were working on it, and they were able to see the changes and so forth. And, they were coming by the property. The kitchen wasn't in. They were like, well, what is it going to look like? Da, 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 da. And, people requesting certain colors. I'm just like, no, don't fall into that trap where you got people saying, hey, I want it to be this color. Can you go ahead and paint it this color? Where we have a typical color code. We stick to that. When you move in, you can't change it either unless it's professionally done, licensed and insured contractor, and then that you'll actually have to get a licensed and insured contractor to change it up after you move out. So when you tell them that, they're like, it was like, oh, I got somebody to do it. Do they have to be licensed? I'm like, yeah, they got to be licensed and insured. So usually that's not as cheap or as reasonable as it usually could be with someone that they know to be able to paint it and so forth. So, um, but yeah, that is a situation. So just being aware of that. Get your team together, guys. So take care. This is the end of day 3. I appreciate everybody chiming in. Um, we're having fun here. I really like this. I really like this. So, day 3 is finalized. You guys take care. It's Chris Brown, real estate professional and marketing entrepreneur, real estate gold digger fall challenge 2025. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Let's get it. Take care.